So to show you guys from a technical standpoint where our integration is actually configured, let's start from the start with our integration modules window, where we define our integrations with different monitoring tools, ITSM solutions, cloud environments, messaging, and AI applications, and so on. And if you're looking at Splunk, what you will see here that all we need to define is, of course, the endpoint URL of Splunk with its API port. This is our internal IP for this instance of Splunk you're seeing right here. And of course, the username and password, and they don't have to be, of course, administrators. We require a specific set of capabilities within the Splunk environment, as listed within our integration guides on our support portal. Now, once we connect to Splunk and the connection is successful, you'll be able to see that we are able to set a monitoring interval and to monitor our Splunk instance every 10 seconds or any type of monitoring interval that you would like to set. This means that Ayehu would ingest any types of alerts from Splunk. And this is a very important notice here, of course, that we are pooling or ingesting alerts and not events, since you could define in Splunk which events constitute an alert and what conditions apply to create an alert for different or the same event. Now, once we define this, the other thing you could do is to only ingest events based on a specific filter. It could be based on the alert type, the actions, the SID, the severity, the title, and any of the fields that are published via the API, and Ayehu could read. Once this is defined, you could go on and see if you start to receive any events from Splunk, and of course, you could test it with any types of events within your real Splunk instance. For example, now you could see that we just received a new incoming event from Splunk. And this event has all the information from, or alert that has all the information from Splunk, as you'll see right here as well. So for example, this alert right here, this space alert in Splunk, would have the same data here in Ayehu. And this data is auto-parsed, and you could use it later on in the workflow to address these variables or fields within Splunk. Now, as you could see here, this is our audit trail, and here you'll see all the different events that come into Ayehu. They could come in from Splunk or any other sources such as ITSM or other monitoring tools. But you'll notice that the alert right here is dropped. Why is that? Because there's no action rule associated with this particular alert, meaning there's no trigger in case we receive this alert to trigger a particular workflow that is going to remediate or perform any type of incident response. Now, in our case, of course, the alert sample that we have is this space alert. And this is another topic. Any type of alert could be a candidate to for automation within Ayehu. It could be NOC or SOC alert. So whatever type of event it is, whether it's a brute force alert or whether it's a disk space or web server alert, Ayehu can automate each one. So if we'll proceed to take a look at a workflow that I have predefined, this workflow reacts to this space alert, and it doesn't do much specifically right here other than enriching the data by getting more information from the event log using our out-of-the-box activities, our building blocks that you could drag and drop from the left-hand side. And of course, getting information such as an operating system and the real disk space. And if you'll notice here, I'm also using percentage characters, and these represent variables. So for example, any variable between percentage characters would use the value of the incoming instance of the alert. So for example, instance or host would be tied to the values that you're seeing right here. Instance is going to be C, of course, which is disk C, and the host would be the host that is forwarding its events to the Splunk enterprise instance. And this makes the workflow very generic. Of course, we could check if the alert is indeed real, and we could check if the disk space is below our threshold, which is in our case 10. And if so, we could proceed to delete certain files and folders. For example, in this case, just to illustrate what I'm doing, I'll delete any files under ctemp within the target host. And then, of course, I could proceed to document everything within a ServiceNow ticket or Remedy ticket, Jira ticket, and any other ITSM integrations that Ayehu provides out of the box. So if you'll see under Activities, you'll find all of the codeless and scriptless out-of-the-box content we have. And of course, that includes Splunk Activities, which I'm going to talk in a bit about. So the Splunk Activities themselves allow you to create, first of all, events by dragging and dropping, of course, the activity called Splunk Create Event. And you could basically select where and on what index you'd like this event to be created. So for example, if I'll send an event right now with the content hello world to Splunk from my Ayehu instance, I will be able to see that event in Splunk. When is it useful? Since Ayehu integrates with all of your other monitoring tools and ITSM platforms, email, chatbots, and so on, you could create events based on the outcome of workflows or any type of correlation or aggregation you're performing. If I'll go back to search and look for this particular event I've just created, you'll be able to see that I just sent an event right now with the content hello world. And that, of course, means that you could send any type of information using these activities for Splunk. Of course, other activities would be to get specific alerts based on filters that you'll set. In this case, of course, the output of the activities would be the alerts themselves and more information regarding the alerts, including drill down raw data. You obviously could also run reports based on the reports you have created within your Splunk environment. The columns of these reports would depend, of course, on the configuration within Splunk. And you'll be able to also query specific events based, again, on a filter. So this could be useful if you'd like to incorporate any other troubleshooting within the workflow when alert is going to trigger it. Now, in our case, we have this predefined workflow already saved. And in case we receive an alert, the only thing left for us to do is going to create a trigger or a policy action to trigger that workflow based on incoming Splunk alert. So I'll call this trigger Splunk alert, disk space, and I'll create a condition. In our case, I'll create a generic condition based on the standard object with the source being Splunk. Of course, these conditions could also depend on more information such as type of the alert or the name of the alert, such as disk space and so on. But for the sake of the demo, of course, I'm going to use this generic condition right here. So now that we've defined the condition, we need to select the workflow that we have created. And we have created the workflow called Splunk Disk Space Remediation. And we're going to save this condition and this trigger right here. Now, whenever we're going to get a new alert from Splunk, which depicts this particular type of issue, in our case, disk space, you'll see that a workflow is going to be triggered. And you could see right here that Splunk triggered this particular workflow named Splunk Disk Space Remediation. You could see this is the type of the alert, of course, and you could see the raw JSON input of the alert. And you could see that Ayehu starts executing the steps defined within the workflow, such as getting the Windows event log information, perhaps parsing or filtering it. It would get the operating system if needed, the real disk space, and it is below the threshold because the threshold was 10, and this is 9.4. And Ayehu would proceed to delete the files. In our case, no files were found under C temp. So Ayehu has created a ticket in ServiceNow, and of course, the ticket would have all the information, whether Ayehu was able to remediate disk space or whether a manual or other intervention is needed. And as Guy mentioned, Ayehu has integration with different AI and chatbot providers, so you'll definitely be able to notify the owner of that application or that particular device within the event and propose the necessary steps to remediate the issue. Another, of course, proposal could be to extend disk space, whether it's using our VMware integration, Hyper-V integration, or of course, cloud integrations such as AWS, Microsoft Azure, and so on. So this is, of course, a very simple workflow. However, it could be turned into a very powerful one if you need human interference, documentation in your ITSM platform. And of course, Ayehu performs all the remediation actions themselves without depending on any other third-party tool. So in case, of course, you'd like to integrate Ayehu with Splunk, it would be very easy, and you could be up and running with the workflow in a matter of minutes. And of course, depending on your use case, you could extend the workflow to your standard operation procedures to fit into your organization and perform the necessary steps as defined by your NOC, SOC, or any other IT department. And that's it for the demo portion.